وملء ما بينهما وملء ما شئت من شيء بعد. أهل الثناء والمجد، أحق ما قال العبد وكلنا لك عبد. ثم الصلاة والسلام على الرحمة المهداة والنعمة المسداة محمد بن عبد الله صلى الله عليه وسلم، وعلى آله وأصحابه وأزواجه وذرياته وأهل بيته ومن تبعهم بإحسان وسلك طريقهم إلى يوم الدين. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. ولقد وصينا الذين أوتوا الكتاب من قبلكم وإياكم أن اتقوا الله. ثم ما بعد. الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر، لا إله إلا الله والله أكبر، الله أكبر ولله الحمد. الله أكبر كبيرا والحمد لله كثيرا وسبحان الله بكرة وأصيلا. لا إله إلا الله ولا نعبد إلا إياه مخلصين له الدين ولو كره الكافرون. قال الله تعالى: ولتكملوا العدة ولتكبروا الله على ما هداكم ولعلكم تشكرون. Allah says, concluding the only verse in the Quran that mentions Ramadan, Allah concludes that verse by saying, and so that you may complete the count, i.e. of Ramadan, 29 or 30 days. وَلِتُكَبِّرُوا اللَّهَ عَلَى مَا هَدَاكُمْ, and that you glorify, magnify, exalt Allah for having guided you. وَلَعَلَّكُمْ, in the hope, maybe, perhaps, perchance, تَشْكُرُونَ, you'll be grateful. Furthermore, Allah says, وَإِذْ تَأَذَّنَ رَبُّكُمْ لَإِنْ شَكَرْتُمْ لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ وَلَإِنْ كَفَرْتُمْ إِنَّ عَذَابِي لَشَدِيدٌ. And when your Lord declared, if you are grateful and thankful and you show appreciation, Allah will increase you and give you more. But if you're ungrateful, then indeed my punishment is severe. Moreover, Allah says, مَا يَفْعَلُ اللَّهُ بِعَذَابِكُمْ إِن شَكَرْتُمْ وَآمَنْتُمْ وَكَانَ اللَّهُ شَاكِرًا عَلِيمًا. What will Allah gain through punishing you if you only show gratitude and believe? And Allah is ever grateful and all-knowing. And finally Allah says, وَاعْبُدُوهُ وَاشْكُرُوا لَهُ إِلَيْهِ تُرْجَعُونَ. Worship Him and be grateful to Him. To Him you shall return. And there are many other verses. Obviously, the common thread in these verses is shukr, gratitude, being thankful, appreciative. And this topic hasn't been selected randomly, haphazardly, in a hit or miss way. This topic, this virtue and value of shukr is very significant, very serious and extremely relevant. A virtue and a value and a topic which is deserving and worthy of our attention. I said at the beginning, in the only verse of the Quran where Allah mentions Ramadan, Allah ends that verse. And how Allah ends verses is something extremely important. We know Ulum al-Quran means the sciences and the disciplines of the Quran. Tajweed, tafsir, tartib al-ayat, tartib al-suwar, ilm al-rasm, al-mansukh, al-nasikh wal-mansukh. There are so many sciences of the Quran. One is al-balagha, ilm al-balagha, eloquence and rhetoric. And the science within a science is ilm tadhyil ayat al-Quran. How Allah ends verses and why Allah ends verses the way He does. And what's the relationship between the end of the verse and the beginning of the verse and the end of the verse and the next verse? That's a science in and of itself that the ulama delve into. Why does Allah end a verse the way He does? And in this verse Allah says at the end, وَلَعَلَّكُمْ تَشْكُرُونَ. This means this virtue and value, this topic is very deserving and worthy of our attention. And Allah couples this virtue and value of shukr with our very purpose on earth, as I recited, وَعْبُدُوهُ وَاشْكُرُوا لَهُ. Worship Him and be grateful to Him. Allah demands from His messenger, بَلِ اللَّهَ فَاعْبُدْ وَكُنْ مِنَ الشَّاكِرِينَ. Rather, Allah, do worship Allah and be of the grateful. So this is not a fringe or marginal topic or secondary or tertiary topic. It's very core and central, and we should see it and view it as such. Our state is, unfortunately, we're very ungrateful. It's not me saying this. Allah is saying, وَقَلِيلٌ مِّنْ عِبَادِيَ الشَّكُورِ. And very few of my servants are grateful. إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَكَفُورٌ مُبِينٌ. Indeed, the human being is very clearly ungrateful. Allah swears by 5 different things, وَالْعَادِيَاتِ ضَبْحًا, until He gets to the point where He wishes to make the following point. إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لِرَبِّهِ لَكَنُودٌ. Indeed, the human being is ungrateful towards his Lord. So this is a very timely reminder. We have a lot to thank Allah for. In the verse of Ramadan, Allah mentions Ramadan, the Quran, Hidayah, fasting, Yuridullah bikum al-yusr, taysir, making things easy for you. Allah mentions a few dispensations and rukhas. Before I came, there was takbir, Allahu Akbar, وَلِتُكَبِّرُ اللَّهَ عَلَى مَا هَدَاكُمْ. And then, at the end, shukr. And we have a lot to thank Allah for. As the poet says, خُبْزٌ وَمَاءٌ وَظِلُّ ذاك النعيم الأجل كفرت نعمة ربي إن قلت إني مقل. Bread and water and shade. These are some of Allah's greatest blessings. Indeed, I am ungrateful if I say I am poor and needy and deprived. Sitting there, believe it or not, just sitting, standing, speaking, talking, eating, drinking, breathing. These are all blessings of Allah Azza wa Jal. We may not view them as such, but these are blessings, and ask those who don't have them. I have a friend who was involved in a car accident many years ago, and when I met him, he said I was hospitalized and bedridden. He said I was confined to one position, riddled with tubes. My body was riddled with tubes. On my back, not for a day or two, not for a week or two, for 6 months. He almost forgot what it was like to sit down. And you're doing just that. But when was the last time we thought this is actually a blessing of Allah and raised our hands and said, Allahumma laka alhamdu ala ni'matul julus. Oh Allah, thank you for the blessing of sitting down. One of the ulama says, I was in a country and I had some time, I was delivering some lectures, and he says, I wanted to go and visit, this is an Arab country, Mustashfa al-Amrad al-Aqliya, a mental health facility. So he says, I went there, he saw a lot, and something he saw to him was very disturbing. He saw a man running around in the health facility, the mental health facility, running around like he's a child, a grown adult, running around, pretending to drive a car and sounding the horn, beep, beep, running around. So he asked, what's his story? He said, that man over there is our colleague. He was a doctor and a consultant in this place. And over the years, this is what's happened to him. When's the last time we raised our hands and said, لَكَ الْحَمْدُ وَالشُّكْرُ عَلَى نِعْمَةِ الْعَقْلِ, that we have a brain that functions properly. Another sheikh, very similar, in another country, went into a mental health facility, was approached by a woman, a young woman. He says, مِنْ أَجْمَلِ مَا خَلَقَ اللَّهِ, of the most beautiful women you could ever imagine. She came to him, she took off his shimagh, his scarf from his head, put it onto her head, took it off her head, put it back onto his head, took it off his head and threw it on the floor and began to weep profusely. Stopped weeping and began to laugh hysterically. And then she began to undress. Disturbed by this, the sheikh with his students rushed out of the mental health facility. And he said to his friends, and he's a famous sheikh, contemporary, Wallahi ma shakartullah ala ni'mat al-aql qabla hadi al-lahza. By Allah, I have not thanked Allah for the blessing of the brain, the mind and the intellect before this moment. We have a lot to thank Allah for. We like to whinge a lot, whining and whinging and moaning. We complain and grumble and we are lamenting over things that we don't have. And we have so much. Look at the donut. Don't look at the empty space at the middle or in the middle. Look at look at your blessings, count your blessings. In fact, one of the Salaf, on Eid Day, in fact, he had an interesting practice. On Eid Day, he would take his students to the maqbara, to the graveyard, and they would stand there for a few minutes and he would say to them, انظروا وتأملوا واذكروا نعمة الله عليكم. Look and reflect and recall Allah's blessings and appreciate Allah's blessings upon you. They are dead and buried for decades and centuries, and you are still alive. You have a chance, a golden opportunity. Look and reflect. And he would take him then to the hospital, the mustashfa. People groaning and ill, bedridden. Again, look at them and reflect and appreciate Allah's blessings upon you. You have health. You're still fit and healthy, and they're not. He would take him again to a mental facility called the Maristan in those days, and the same thing. And to a prison, and seeing people behind bars, their freedom taken off them because of their crime. Look at them and reflect. You are free to do what you please. Reflect and thank Allah's blessings upon you. Just to end with very quickly, how does this relate to us, especially on Eid Day? This topic of shukr is relevant generically, but specifically on Eid Day. We may recite the surah of Quraysh, لِإِلَافِ Quraysh, and assume Allah is talking about the Quraysh only and addressing them only and not us. As if Allah is mentioning some interesting, mentally stimulating, fascinating historical facts. Nothing more, nothing less. And the reality is Allah is addressing every single one of us through Quraysh and says, لِإِلَافِ قُرَيْشٍ إِلَافِهِمْ رِحْلَةَ الشِّتَاءِ وَالصَّيْفِ. And the key word here is لِإِلَافِ. Can be a bit tricky to translate, but one translation is, because of the accustomed trade caravan that would head north to Sham for trade in the summer, and then head south to Yemen for trade in the winter. Because of you becoming accustomed to this trade caravan, buying, selling, trade, making money, people respecting you, revering you as the Quraysh, looking up to you. You are the caretakers and the custodians and the keepers of the Kaaba. They would travel in peace because they were the Quraysh. Because of this, فَلْيَعْبُدُ رَبَّ هَذَا الْبَيْتِ. Worship the Lord of this house. And the key word is accustomed to, used to. How does this apply to us? We are accustomed to so many things. We enjoy so many blessings of Allah Azza wa Jal that we are desensitized to, benumbed to. Why? Because we're so accustomed to them. Every single year, Eid, we wake up from our mattress, having had a good night's sleep. We wake up, we bathe, we wear our beautiful clothes, we apply fragrance, we go to the masjid, we eat, we drink, and we do this year in, year out. In fact, we do this day in, day out, as the norm. Li'ilafi, from elf, from ta'awwud. When you become accustomed to something, used to something, it becomes the norm, habitual, it becomes customary. This leads to taking that thing for granted, which leads to us devaluing, depreciating, belittling and underestimating that ni'mah, which leads to ultimately kufran and ni'mah, being ungrateful, ingratitude, thanklessness, and a lack of appreciation. I end with a poem. The poet says, إذا كنت في نعمة فرعها فإن المعاصي تزيل النعم وداوم على شكر الإله فإن الإله سريع النقم. The poet says, if you have been blessed, then protect your blessings. Cherish them, treasure them and protect them. فَإِنَّ الْمَعَاصِي تُزِيلُ النِّعَمِ. Because sins and vices, they destroy blessings. وَدَاوِمْ عَلَى شُكْرِ الْإِلَهِ. And be regular and consistent in thanking Allah for His blessings. Because the Ilah, Allah Jalla fi'ula, is very swift in His revenge.